It's been a tumultuous time in French politics, with the far right coming close to taking power. The culture wars are raging, and they have their eye on a surprising new battalion. Young women galvanised by an anti-immigration message. Tensions are high.
The police have just physically stopped us from approaching the far-right protesters. They've said that we aren't allowed to speak to them.
Women on the left are fighting back in a struggle for the soul of French feminism. Why are young French women turning to the far right? And who are the new influencers? I'm in Paris to find out. It's midnight at the Sorbonne University.
Tu veux coller directement sur les affiches après ou pas? Parce que, enfin, comme tu veux. Tu peux les arracher si tu veux, vas-y.
20-year-old Kaïna is out fly posting for her student party, La Cocarde. She has to work quickly in case she's caught, not just by the authorities, but by other students.
En faisant ça, notamment par des gauchistes en fait, qui passent et qui nous insultent. Comment ça, y a la cocarde, dégagez ici. Selon eux, on n'a pas notre place en fait dans les facs. Donc pour eux, c'est, leur phrase, c'est clairement la cocarde hors des facs. Donc on n'a pas le droit d'être ici selon eux. En fait, on vient coller, on vient tracter justement sur les campus pour montrer que si on a notre place ici.
She's one of the party's rising stars and is standing in the campus elections. The uni has a reputation for being the home of left-wing student activists, but Kaïna wants to tear this down.
So they're saying things like stop the genocide in Gaza.
Et
stop the right-wing party.
Voilà, le patriarcat, ils sont bien à gauche.
So you're going to cover these over?
Yes.
You're going to cover them with your own posters?
Yes.
Yeah.
These walls have come to symbolise what's happening across the country, a contest for the votes of young women in a competing vision of France's future. Traditionally in France, it's been men who vote for the far right. But in the last elections, 32% of women backed these parties. A profound shift led by this man, Jordan Bardella, the heir to Marine Le Pen.
Je veux m'adresser aujourd'hui à toutes les femmes de France. Jamais aucune femme ne devrait craindre de sortir dans les rues de notre pays. La France est ce pays de liberté où les femmes doivent être respectées.
His party, the National Rally or RN, has worked hard to rebrand its image. It now styles itself as a defender of women's rights and says the biggest threat to those rights is immigration. To appeal to women, it's recently softened its anti-abortion stance, but it's still less supportive on other issues, including the gender pay gap and LGBTQ rights. It's a message that seems to be resonating with some. I catch up with Kaïna as she discusses her election campaign with her party activists.
Du coup, sur le programme...
Là, on a un vrai programme.
Même les contrôles de sécurité et tout pour les femmes, c'est quand même mieux, je trouve.
Ça va toucher déjà tous les étudiants en fait,
et particulièrement les femmes.
Qui se considèrent de droite. Et en plus de ça, effectivement, les femmes vont se sentir concernées.
Their election slogans focus on the murder of a 19-year-old student named Philippine in September 2024.
It says justice for Philippine.
Étudiante assassinée par un migrant marocain sous OQTF.
And that was such a horrible case, but you seem to have turned it into an issue about immigration. I mean, you could argue there are a lot of feminists who say that actually the wider issue is about violence against all women, including migrant women, black women.
On est un syndicat patriote et donc en fait on défend nos nationaux tout simplement. Donc effectivement quand on parle de la cause des femmes, on défend en fait les femmes françaises tout simplement.
You know, there's a view that some far-right parties just use women's issues, so they're not really interested in women's rights. in things like abortion, for example.
Je pense que c'est nous, à droite, qui défendons le plus et le mieux les femmes.
I tried to press her on those women's rights and ask what else she believes in, but the conversation keeps coming back to immigration.
Durant notre campagne, nous défendrons 3 valeurs. Le patriotisme, les libertés et la tradition. Nous sommes le seul mouvement étudiant patriote face au gauchisme, au wokisme et à toutes les dérives idéologiques qui gangrènent notre université.
Top, bravo.
Kaïna's part of a new wave of women influencers known as Femo-nationalists, who say they're reclaiming feminism. The most prominent of these is the Nemesis Collective, named after the Greek goddess of revenge.
The Nemesis Collective describe themselves as a thorn in the side of mainstream feminism. Although they talk about women's rights, it's clear that their agenda is anti-immigration and more specifically anti-Muslim.
They're known for their protests and publicity stunts against Islam, including this No Hijab Day. They're also linked with groups in the UK and travelled to London to support the far-right extremist Tommy Robinson when he held a rally in Trafalgar Square. They told us they'd only be interviewed if they could approve everyone we spoke to, and also said they felt foreign media was a waste of time.
But we found out they've got a conference on today, so we're on our way to see if they'll let us in.
The conference is in Fréjus. It's a key city for the national rally. The local mayor's a strong party ally and a close friend of Bardella. It's being hosted in this historic 19th century villa. Public and private events are held here, and initially we're allowed to walk in. We spot the head of the Nemesis Collective, Alice Cordier.
Hi, I'm Darshna.
On voulait savoir si c'était possible d'assister à la conférence.
Non.
Pas du tout.
On vous a prévenu qu'on ne voulait pas intervenir dans votre reportage. Donc,
Ouais.
Vous êtes en train de filmer là? C'est en train de filmer ou pas?
Oui, c'est en train de filmer. Ouais.
Vous pouvez supprimer? On est dans un lieu privé, j'ai pas donné mon autorisation. Est-ce que vous pouvez supprimer s'il vous plaît?
We went to leave,
They don't want us to leave the area.
but at first were prevented because they wanted us to delete our footage. Alice seized the moment on social media, claiming in a tweet we'd forced our way in and refused to leave until threatened with police action. The post has almost 250,000 views.
Now, they advertise this as a place for people to come and ask questions and exchange views, but they obviously didn't want to exchange views with us.
I want to find out how these activists are getting a national platform. I've been invited to the studio of Frontier, which targets a similar audience to the UK's GB News. Louise Maurice is one of their biggest names, and we watched her host their new live morning show.
Frontière, la matinale, Louise Maurice.
Bonjour et bienvenue sur Frontière, la matinale, il est 8h.
Parce qu'ils savent que c'est leur point faible.
I've got an interesting collection of guests. This is Damien Rioux. He's a far-right activist who's known for co-founding a group called Generation Identity. And in 2021, the group was actually banned for inciting racial hatred.
Their next guest is Alice Cordier. We haven't seen her since we were stopped from filming their conference, and it's slightly awkward. Although she agrees to let us film the podcast, she doesn't want to speak to us.
Bonjour Alice, comment vas-tu?
Bonjour, très bien Louise et toi?
Super. Comment vis-tu le traitement des médias envers toi et envers le collectif Nemesis?
Je remercie vraiment ces médias-là. Il y en a un qui est présent aujourd'hui chez Channel 4. Je les ai refusés il y a quelques semaines par écrit parce qu'il y avait un manque de neutralité évident dans leur ligne éditoriale. Ce qui les intéresse, c'est même pas de savoir pourquoi. Au fond, il y a aujourd'hui des femmes qui militent contre l'immigration et c'est ça qui a tendance à m'énerver.
Despite being in the room, we weren't allowed to reply to her criticism of us.
Qu'aujourd'hui, il y a un grand problème de liberté d'expression en Europe, et pas seulement en Europe.
Alice went on to discuss Tommy Robinson, repeating inaccurate conspiracy theories about his prison sentence, recently amplified by the likes of Elon Musk.
Tommy Robinson, il est incarcéré aujourd'hui non pas pour des problèmes vraiment on va dire des délits ou des crimes. C'est pas sur du pénal, c'est sur des choses civiles en fait qu'il est aujourd'hui incarcéré, ce qui est quand même très grave. Enfin, je trouve que c'est une atteinte à la liberté d'expression énorme.
À très vite Alice, bon courage pour Nemesis. On prend une pause désormais dans Frontières, la matinale. Restez avec nous, à tout de suite.
Do you mind if we just do a quick interview, very quick, just about what you were saying about Tommy Robinson? Just a couple of quick questions, Alice.
On est dehors, vous êtes plus droit de filmer.
I'm starting to get the feeling that this new group of feminists are only willing to engage in discussion if it's on their terms. I ask Louise about criticism that her podcast is being used by some as a platform to amplify misinformation.
There are a number of claims made about the English far-right activist Tommy Robinson, that he wasn't convicted of any crime, that he was jailed because of freedom of speech. Actually, he was convicted of a crime for contempt of court over a video that he made with false allegations about a Syrian refugee. Do you not have a responsibility to correct these claims?
Quand ce sont des fausses informations et que j'en ai pas connaissance, ce n'est pas de ma responsabilité. En revanche, c'est de ma responsabilité quand c'est facilement fact-checking, on va dire, quand c'est facilement vérifiable sur le moment.
Don't you have a responsibility to provide the context about some of the claims that they're making about immigration, for example?
Excuse me, just 1 second. If you're trying to depict our media as disinformation media or something like that, go elsewhere, there is no point in it, you know.
Oh, are you saying we can't stay and carry on with the interview?
No, I'm not saying that. So good.
Et effectivement, on est dans un petit média, faut pas l'oublier. Nous, on n'est pas forcément 100% sur le sujet, on essaie de couvrir, tout comme vous, peut-être vous couvrez en France ce qui se passe et on le fait à notre niveau.
We've seen a rise of women now on social media. How has that come about?
Mais on est les mieux placés pour parler de certaines choses et il ne faut pas toujours laisser les hommes parler à notre place. J'étais très féministe, donc plutôt néo-féministe, comme on peut l'entendre. Mais j'ai eu vraiment ce manque du côté de la gauche de mettre en avant les profils qui nous agressaient très régulièrement. Que ce soit des personnes issues de l'immigration, que ce soit des personnes qui étaient sous OQTF, donc présents en France de manière illégale. Et en fait, ça a commencé, j'ai commencé à me poser la question de pourquoi elles n'en parlent pas. On n'est pas là à blâmer seulement les migrants, les Noirs, les Arabes et tous ceux que certains nous donnent comme parole, alors que c'est faux. Nous, on met juste en avant ce que la gauche préfère laisser dans l'ombre volontairement. C'est la raison pour laquelle moi je soutiens Alice Cordier, je soutiens le collectif Nemesis, c'est puisqu'elle parle de tous ces sujets-là.
Femo-nationalists say immigration is the biggest issue in France. And yet, migrants themselves are rarely heard in this debate. Every Friday in the centre of town, Mariam Sidibert leads a protest for those she says are deliberately silenced. She's originally from Senegal and now campaigns for the rights of undocumented migrants. Known as les sans-papiers, they gather to demand recognition.
Women on the right say that migrants are the biggest threat to women's rights.
C'est faux. Pour moi, c'est faux. L'extrême droite, ça, c'est leur mot pour pouvoir se débarrasser de l'immigration. Tout simplement. C'est eux qui sont des menaces pour nous. L'extrême droite est menace pour les immigrés. Ils sont des menaces pour nous. Ils nous exploitent et ils ne veulent pas qu'on le dise.
For you, people who are migrants are doing the jobs that people here don't want to do.
S'ils ont besoin de quoi que ce soit, c'est les immigrés là qui apportent cette richesse. C'est eux qui, grâce à nous. Quand il ne faut pas qu'ils mentent sur nous, ce sont des mensonges. Qu'ils veulent, qu'ils ne veulent pas. Là où partout on est installé, c'est chez nous. Qu'ils le sachent, qu'ils le mettent en tête. C'est eux qui nous ont colonisés. C'est eux qui partaient chercher des travailleurs, des main-d'œuvre. Tant qu'ils sont chez nous, nous serons là. Qu'ils veulent ou non ou pas. C'est ça.
Nous sommes à la rue aujourd'hui pour leur dire que nous existons.
Refugee groups accuse far-right parties of exploiting concerns about women's safety to further their own anti-immigrant agenda. I want to put this to the National Rally. Edwige Diaz is an MP and the party's vice president, helping it promote a new image. Whilst they focus on immigration, they're trying to broaden their appeal to women.
Je peux vous expliquer, nous, au quotidien, comment chaque salle est utilisée par les députés.
The party's been wooing women's votes, but I want to know what their policies are. So I join Edwige on a tour of the National Assembly for her constituents.
So how many seats do you have now for the RN?
142 sur 577.
And that's where you guys sit?
Oui, Marine Le Pen qui est place 36 et moi qui suis place 33.
I ask her about criticisms from some that the feminism her party offers is for white privileged women only.
Ah non, non, pas du tout. En fait, nous, au Rassemblement national, nous défendons l'intégralité des femmes françaises, mais peu importe leur origine ou leur religion. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous, nous sommes en pointe dans la lutte contre le fondamentalisme islamiste.
And what about the headscarf?
Nous considérons que ça n'est pas un symbole de laïcité. Nous considérons que ça n'est pas non plus un symbole de liberté de la femme. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous nous opposons au port du voile intégral, parce qu'il est clairement le symbole du prosélytisme islamiste et de l'obscurantisme.
A lot of Muslim women will take exception to that and say it's their choice how they dress. If they choose to cover their face, it shouldn't matter.
Je dis à ces dames que si elles ont envie de porter le voile, il y a plein de pays dans lesquels elles pourront porter le voile.
It's not just in the capital that French women share some of the views of the far right. Nestled in the hills of Loire is the village of La Bénisson-Dieu. It's home to a group of families disillusioned with modern, liberal attitudes to gender. They relocated here from Paris to form a commune that preserves their idea of traditional values and family structures. Marianne Turano is an author who helped found the commune and says her way of life is a fusion of left and right-wing politics.
On essaye de préserver ce qui existe et de ne pas perdre complètement des compétences qu'on nous a transmises de génération en génération.
Do you feel that the traditional way of life is being lost somehow?
Ce n'est pas une question de recréer le passé, et c'est important pour moi d'avoir ce savoir qui est une condition de liberté.
Green issues traditionally are seen as something on the left of politics, but you are marrying them with things like contraception on the traditional family, which are usually on the right.
J'ai aucun problème en fait à être sur certains points d'accord avec l'extrême droite, mais on ne justifie pas du tout les choses de la même manière.
Marianne discovered politics in 2013 when France introduced same-sex marriages and she campaigned against them. She's critical of modern feminism.
Je suis un tout petit peu énervée avec cette idée que pour être féministe aujourd'hui, il faut surtout pas trop avoir l'air de dire que les femmes ça existe. Je ne pense pas qu'il suffise qu'un homme opère une transition et s'habille en femme pour pouvoir prétendre connaître ce qu'est être une femme.
These ideas are becoming more and more popular with some women on the right.
Je pense vraiment que là, il y a un point de convergence intéressant entre effectivement certains milieux plus traditionnels et certains milieux plus alternatifs. Et moi, je me sens vraiment à la jonction des deux.
Back in Paris, the Sorbonne University election results have been announced. Kaïna, the student I met earlier standing for the election, is nowhere to be seen and no longer wants to film with us.
La cocarde et l'UNI, ils maintiennent leur siège, mais ils sont quand même pris une raclée en nombre de votes. Ils ont énormément reculé. On est en train de refuser de laisser l'extrême droite et ses idées nauséabondes en fait dans nos universités. C'est important qu'on continue de dire qu'elles n'ont aucune place à la fac.
Siamo tutti antifascisti! E Sorbonne, Sorbonne! Antifa! E Sorbonne, Sorbonne!
Some women on the left say their hard-won freedoms are threatened by the rise of what they call false feminists. These competing ideas come to clash when tens of thousands of women descend on Paris for this protest against sexual violence. Among the placards, justice for Gisèle Pellicot, who was drugged and raped by her husband and dozens of other men. For activist Yelena, the case destroys the myth that it's mainly migrant men who commit sexual violence.
Now with the Pellicot case, they are understanding that rapists are not someone that is like violent, someone that is going to be crazy. It's rapists with the Pellicot case. You can see they are average men actually.
Solidarité avec les femmes du monde entier.
Around 400 women's groups have united for the march, but there's another not so welcomed who have turned up.
Libérez-nous de l'immigration! Libérez-nous de l'immigration! Libérez-nous!
The Nemesis Collective, led by Elise, surrounded by a wall of police protection.
We can see Alice there. We're going to try and get an interview with her to ask why the far right have turned up here today and why they feel they need to be protected by a wall of police.
We find Alice talking to a journalist from Frontières. But within seconds of us showing up, she asks the police to escort us out.
Excusez-moi, elles sont pas avec nous. Elles sont pas avec nous, vous les faites sortir.
And the officers oblige.
Can we just ask you a couple of questions about why you're here today? Sorry, we're from the press. We just want to ask her a couple of questions. So this is pretty unusual. We're trying to speak to the far-right protesters. The police are here. They've got their shields up. They're physically pushing us away.
We asked the Paris police why they'd only allowed some journalists to approach the Nemesis Collective, but they didn't respond.
Look around, there's not so many people here today, like people all together fighting against fascism, fighting against patriarchy.
Is there a battle for ideas here between feminists on the left and those on the hard right?
Actually, there is no feminism on the far right, the thing is, because fighting for women only if it's against immigrants is not feminism. So there is not a fight. There is people, they choose feminism for their racist idea. They use our fights for them.
France prides itself on being the birthplace of feminism. But I've seen that a growing number of young women feel the traditional left no longer speaks to them. While they're still in a minority, Femo-nationalists claim they are the new champions of women's freedoms, and they're using their influence to get the far right closer to power.